Thank you, Melissa. The sampling timeline updates, and then we have a couple of slides too. We went through this back in October, but it's been a while. So on tier 1 and tier 2 sampling, but Josie, I can click through for you too. But
yeah, so we're all the way down at the right-hand side of the timeline now, which is exciting. We completed all the sampling. The riverbank sampling actually ended up happening in November instead of October. And since then, we've just been working on getting the samples analyzed. And we are getting that data back now. I think at the end of this week, we're expecting to get the final results back. And so when we get that data, then it has to be uploaded into a database where it can actually be worked with. So when I say we got the data, I mean like somebody handed us, it's handed us like 60 different Excel files that the data has been reviewed by data validators. So we know the data is good, but it needs to get put into one database where we can look at what those results are. And in that database is where we compare the result we got from the lab with the cleanup levels or with the remedial action levels that allow us to then make decisions based on that data. And so this data we're getting back is, remember, we're doing these analytical in tiers. So we started with doing tier 1 samples is what we call it. So if you want to go to the next slide, Laura. So here's your visual. Imagine this core gets taken, right? A 15-foot core, and we selected at each foot of the core, we pulled that out and made that one interval. And so we sent 4 of those intervals off to the lab as part of tier 1, the 0 to 1 foot horizon, the 4 to 5 foot horizon. Laura's going to do it with her cursor.
Oh,
yeah. Then the 9 to 10 foot horizon and the 14 to 15 foot horizon. And then depending on what those results are, it's going to trigger a second round of what we're calling tier 2 analytical samples. So go to the next slide and it will be easier to see. So imagine in this core, the first interval from 0 to 1 was above our remediation thresholds. So then it means, but the second one down from 4 to 5 was below our remediation thresholds. So we're looking for where that depth of contamination is then between 1 foot and 4 feet. And so we would send those 3 intervals between 1 and 4 feet to the lab as part of tier 2. And that will help us determine how deep the contamination goes. So go to the next slide, Laura. Here's just other examples of, if we got back the core on the left, where the top 3 were the interval from 0 to 1, the interval from 4 to 5, and the interval from 9 to 10 all came back above our remediation thresholds, then we're going to assume that whole core down to that level is contaminated above our remediation thresholds. And we just go deeper than that to try to find where the depth is. And then the last example there on the right is one where the top was below our remediation thresholds. But down in the 4 to 5 foot, we saw some elevated concentrations. And in that case, we're going to go on both sides of that to delineate that contamination vertically. So we're hoping to, we've got all the data loaded in. We're going to start massaging it and looking at it. And our plan is in mid-February to be able to identify which samples need to be sent off for tier 2 analytical. And that, it'll be the same process because we're using our EPA systems and various contracting mechanisms. We send it off through 3 different lab processes to different labs, and then we'll get that data back. And that process takes 3 to 4 months typically. The things did get slowed down. The labs have these interesting supply chain issues. Like at one point they were low on toluene, so there's a sample thing they couldn't run. And when their machines break down, they're having longer delays to get them fixed these days. So we did see some delays with these samples. Hopefully we won't see the same delays with tier 2, but that will just depend on factors beyond our control. So we're hoping to get that tier 2 analytical results back by late spring or early summer. And that's when we'll really get good granularity on what's out in the places where we took the sediment cores. So these are the in-river sediment cores and the riverbank cores. The incremental samples that we took aren't going through a tier 1 and tier 2 process, right? So those have all been run as part of tier 1, and we should have that.
Refresh people just the incremental samples
that's what we did on the beach, where we took those small gatherings of soil and combined them all into the decision unit samples that were then sent off. And so we did that in September. So we'll be able to talk about those results sooner because there's not this tier 2 step with those. That's going to happen right there on our timeline.
This should be November. Oops.
So that's what's happening with the sampling at Cathedral Park. Any questions?
And we have another thing to share. I'll share in a second with you all that goes into more detail about what Josie just said about this part. So right now we say mid to late 2022, but Josie just gave some other dates about February, and we have some questions for you. So we'll go to that in a second, but does anyone have any questions off what Josie just said? Let's see. Any hands? Yeah. Doug? You don't have your hand up. I'm just wondering.
No, I'm just kind of startled that I understand what she's talking about.
Very validating. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, that shows how long I've been coming to these things.
Oh, does anyone, whoever can guess correctly when our first meeting of this working group was, does anyone remember what month it was last year?
What year?
Well, it was last year. So, oh, Willie is raising his hand. Willie, do you remember? Or do you have a question for Josie?
Yeah, I don't know. I do not have an answer to that. I'm sorry.
Oh, you just have a question. That's a real question. Okay, go for it.
So I was just curious. I just don't have the restraint not to ask this question. But with all of this preliminary data, is there any chance it could just be sorted really quickly just to kind of see if there's any hot spots? I mean, just analysis.
No, I actually, I actually the other day I couldn't handle it anymore. And I was like, I've got all these PDFs in my email. It comes kind of through me. Like, I'm just going to go look in here.
Right.
No, it's like
It's
a
just
different
too
language.
much.
These like lab
Roger.
reports, and it's no, I
Okay.
gave up.
I love
Right
that
on.
you were interested in looking though.
You know, Josie, she's gonna get in there. But that's a good segue, Willie, to this, because and Josie and I are both going to talk about this, but Alyssa, if you want to put the link to this. So this mural, just so you know, I can zoom out. This actually encompasses work that we've done in the past in this working group, all the way back here. This is like one of our first. Oh, and our first meeting, by the way, was last February. That's the answer to that question. So it's been almost a year. So thank you, Alyssa. So anyway, but today we wanted to focus in on this little piece because that last little bit, the publishing sampling results and that timeline on the PowerPoint slide, this breaks it down a little bit more because there's some other pieces to that and visually breaks it down. So this is what Josie was saying, that but there might be some edits to this, Josie, that you and I can make in real time on this, but late February 22, so soon, to early March. And this is tentative, we're hoping that all of this is gonna flow, but just because of the delays Josie's talked about, with the labs, want to just set that expectation that things are a little slow, but we're hoping, that by then Josie will have had a chance to kind of look at those tier 1, results that she was just talking about, and that we can have something together for this working group that we can kind of give an early discussion about. So we do have a suggestion. That's why we were thinking maybe later in March. I know the next collaborative meeting is March 9th. So maybe sometime after that, we could have our next working group meeting, because then there'll be some more there. But Josie, do you want to say anything about that particular piece?
Yeah, I think that's just, once we've done the work to identify those tier 2 samples, I think we'll have a much better idea. We'll have that quick, dirty look you wanted, Willie. It won't be, we won't have graphics for it, but we can kind of speak to generally what the data are showing at that point.
Thank you. But for Willie's, but everyone I know is interested in this, we were talking about the beach sampling results. So this, because Josie, this is basically, you're going to see all, everything, like the cores, like the riverbank cores.
Right. Well, I think Willie's also interested in the cores right near the.
Right. That's true. Fields. But for the beach sampling, the ISM, the incremental sampling methodology, that many of you went to see, that, those sampling results should be, again, tentative, but in mid-March, those should be pretty well baked.
Yeah.
For this working group anyway, we can definitely, share that. So another pitch for having a later meeting in March for this working group, because we could actually, there'll be more meat to that. Josie, anything you would like to say about that?
Nope.
Okay, so now we're getting into some questions. So by the summer, so this is the thing that Josie and I are kind of, grappling with. Just so all of you know, we're still not allowed to travel, but we're hoping that's going to change soon. For non-mission critical events anyway, which unfortunately community engagement is considered that. But I'll just go over these briefly. So by summer 2022, we're hoping that there's going to be a draft evaluation report, for all the sampling results. So that includes the beach, the riverbank, the sediment. And so, Josie and I were talking about this because that report is not, it's different than, remember when we had all of you and then Marcus, the Willamette River Advocacy Group that I know Mark is with, directed their technical advisor Marcus to review that quality assurance plan for Cathedral Park for the sampling, and we talked about that, and Marcus actually gave us comments. Do folks remember that? Kind of seeing.
I remember, Laura. Yeah.
Okay, Josie remembers it. So those comments, we actually made some, we were able to clarify things. We made like some changes to the final report. This draft evaluation report, it is evaluating the sampling results. So if folks were to review that, or if the RAG decided to have Marcus review that again, it wouldn't be, the kind of comments, it's not like we can change things in how we evaluated the samples, because it basically kind of is what it is, right? But Josie and I were just brainstorming that, the draft evaluation report, if we were to give it to this working group for you to look at, or have Marcus, suggest to the RAG that Marcus take a look at it, you could potentially, Marcus could potentially look at it with a lens of, what are some areas that could use more explanation and how things are being explained in this report, or like, it would be really nice to have a graphic for this area, or I don't understand, anything. Josie, did you want to talk a little more about some of our thoughts?
No, I think that explains it well. That it just, unlike the sampling plan where there was really an opportunity to kind of affect the action we're going to take in the field, this is just the bare bones data report of what the results of that sampling event were. So it would just be a different kind of feedback that we'd be able to incorporate. And yeah.
So the main question that I'd like to pose to, because we have so many brilliant minds here, and thank you all for being here, is it, do you feel like that, looking at that draft evaluation report with that lens, is that worth your time, basically? Or would you rather not, look at it and just kind of wait until, this final evaluation report comes? Or, do you see any value in having us, give it to you in advance and maybe connect with the RAG to see if Marcus might want to take a look at it with the lens of looking at areas, looking at it for areas that might warrant additional explanation from us, or put, like I and Josie can work on. Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Well, the March meeting, we're probably going to get feedback on sampling results. So it's not such a huge area that I anticipate that the evaluation is going to be radically different from just early looks at the results. So I'd be fine with waiting for the final.
I think just so I don't get your hopes up, I think that briefing in March isn't going to include many. It's going to have no visuals with it.
Well, we can always hope, Josie.
We'll have Alicia do like a live mural drawing of what I say. It'll be like an interpretive art experience.
Well, and hopefully, Josie, I can help a little bit with preparing something to make it a little more understandable. But
Okay, great.
Yeah, but we'll see. But Josie's right. It would be me helping versus, like, I think we had sometimes we have more help on some of that, but that's a good point, Josie. I
But
just want to say,
the
Todd.
March and the summer meetings might be combined and meet somewhere in the middle.
Thank you. And Kathy, I see your hand. Hold on one second. I just want to say that Todd Hudson, hello, welcome. Todd is here from the Oregon Health Authority. Thanks for popping in. Thank you.
I was just, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy. No, I was just going to point to you. Yeah.
Oh, I was just responding to your question about, do we want to look at the draft report? And I guess I wondered, who do you imagine reading that report ultimately besides us? Are there, is this to the public? Is this going to be published on your website? Who would require the additional explanation that we might ask for?
It will be made public once it's final. I think our real audience for that is whoever picks up remedial design and completes remedial design at Cathedral Park. That they will use this as a foundation for the rest of the remedial design.
Okay, so it's really a professional technical document. It's really
Very
not
much so.
meant for the public. So our input would, I mean, at least from my point of view, would just be a person who comes to it in relative ignorance. So I'm not sure that my input would be that valuable. I mean, I can tell you, oh, I need more explanation here because I don't understand what you're talking about, but that's probably because I just don't understand what you're talking about.
I do think that's one of the things to consider, Kathy. You know, with everybody's limited time, I'm not sure that this is the right document to spend time on.
You're going to hear about it. So that's why I wanted to let you know about it and see kind of what you thought. But that's, Kathy, that's super helpful feedback. And Doug, you too. So from Kathy and Doug, I'm hearing that folks might be okay not getting inundated with a very technical report and kind of waiting to see those final evaluation reports. But are there any other thoughts, Mama Long or Sarah? Oh, wait, I see a hand. Mama Long.
Yeah, I think I would like it if like Marcus through the RAG would just kind of take a look at it, even if like people's questions would not like people's input would have like any type of impact. It would just kind of be nice and see. It does a really good job of decoding some of the stuff in like language that's like understandable, especially like with the RAG, which has like a more technical focus and perspective for community members, for those people who would like mostly be interested in kind of digging deep into it and just kind of already going to that meeting, having an idea and maybe preparing like questions beforehand to kind of enrich that discussion when the final report. But so would like it if Marcus would take a look, not necessarily for any type of impact for comments, but just for people who would be interested in seeing it before that
That's a great
meeting
point.
and understanding it.
Sounds good. I can talk to Mark. I know you're on from the RAG. I know Mama Long, you talk to them too. So we can all kind of talk to Emil and Mark and about that. I think that's a great point. Thank you very much. And I know Barbara Quinn. Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for joining. We were just talking, Barbara, about the tentative upcoming timeline. It's tentative. Josie was talking about how there are lab delays, but we're anticipating that by our next working group meeting in late March, we'll be able to talk about very early kind of preliminary sampling results from the beach sampling and the sediment coring and the riverbank coring. And then we were just talking about that there's a draft evaluation report that we're anticipating will come out in the summer, and just, you know, is it worth folks' time in this working group to maybe get a draft of that or not, because it's not going to, comments won't change the evaluation, but it would be, you know, before the final report's published. And so that's where we were at right now, just so you know.
Okay.
So Doug and Kathy were kind of saying it's, you know, the real, and Josie was clarifying that this evaluation report is really going to be most useful for the people who are going to be doing remedial action down the line to take. So it's pretty technical. But Mama Long was just making the point too that, you know, she and also Marcus, if the RAG directs him to review it. It'd be good for him to take a look at it to kind of see the impact that it might have and just see if there's interest and for understanding for people. So,
Okay.
quick summary.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Any other thoughts on this? I think that's a good summary. I think we can, Josie, I think we have a path forward for that. So we won't plan to share it with this full working group, but if there is anyone who's specifically interested, who hasn't, spoken up, let me know, and then we'll monologue, we'll share it with you and check with the RAG and Marcus. And then the final report is estimated, for early fall. So just FYI. And just so you know, Alyssa, if you wouldn't mind, you probably put it in anyway, but there is a special document collection that EPA has for the Cathedral Park project area. So she'll put that link in the chat. Thank you so much, Alyssa. And that's where all Cathedral Park documents are going inevitably until the end of time, but we'll see what happens.
In perpetuity.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
So there's some of our working group PowerPoints are in there too. Not all of them because I'm behind, but and then this is the thing we wanted to talk about is so we will have the beach sampling results final, right, by mid-March. That's the dream, but we won't have all of the sampling results really final for the riverbank coring and the in-water sediment cores, right, until this final evaluation report hits the streets, which is probably going to be in early fall. So, we've had a dream in this working group, I know, and I've had the dream too of having an in-person event where we can actually, oh, sorry, Doug, I see you have your hand up, go for it.
So am I hearing right that this final evaluation for EPA sampling leads into sampling from the contractor that's going to do the work? Or is this going to be the final round of sampling and then a contract's put out to do the actual cleanup?
So most of these designs require 2 rounds of sampling. So this was the initial round of sampling. And there's going to be some data gaps that exist after this sampling, like if we don't find depth of contamination in one of those cores, or if we need to get higher density to do a better job of delineating some things. And there's also, like, we haven't done the geotechnical sampling yet. So there's going to be a second round of sampling that happens that we're calling a supplemental
Okay,
sampling
well,
event.
that makes sense to use the first round of sampling to focus the second round.
Exactly.
Thank you.
But I mean, I know that we are still looking, for parties to step up for this area. So eventually, the dream is that this would be, these results would be transferred over to whoever is going to be picking up that additional remedial design work.
So are you optimistic that somebody else will do the second round of sampling, or do you anticipate EPA will continue on with it?
We're always optimistic, Doug. We're continuing to pursue other parties.